Quel peuple fut pionnier en donnant le droit de vote aux femmes? Qui ont été les premiers à gravir l'Everest? Ils se sont battus à nos côtés pendant les deux guerres. Un indice? Ils ont l'équipe de rugby la plus connue au monde. Ça y est, vous y êtes? C'est vrai qu'on en parle peu de notre antipode. Mais au fait, comment ce peuple parvient-il à se définir et à se démarquer du reste du monde? Partons à leur rencontre. Ici, ces réussites étaient dues à la variété d'ethnies et donc de cultures qui composent le peuple néo-zélandais. Des hommes, en provenance de divers pays, se sont installés en Nouvelle-Zélande à différentes époques, si bien qu'aujourd'hui, la population néo-zélandaise est composée principalement d'Européens, de Maoris et d'Asiatiques. C'est un melting pot plutôt réussi. D'ailleurs, la diversité culturelle s'observe partout.
Bonjour, my name is Georgina Bayer. I'm a New Zealand Māori, which Māori are the indigenous peoples of New Zealand. I'm also a Member of Parliament in New Zealand. I belong to the Labour Party and I'm a Labour list MP in Parliament. I am a transsexual and I'm the world's first transsexual to have been elected to the New Zealand Parliament. And anywhere in the world actually, and I was also the world's first transsexual to be elected as a mayor. New Zealand was world leading when in 1893 the Parliament of the day, and after much lobbying and through suffragists, gave women the vote. But it wasn't until sometime in the early to middle 1900s that we actually had a woman member of Parliament. Currently, the proportion of women in our Parliament constitutes about 32% of the Parliament is full of women from across all parties in the House. It's amongst one of the highest ratios of women to men or men to women in the world. And of course, we have now had two women Prime Ministers, but the Right Honourable Helen Clark was the first elected woman Prime Minister in New Zealand. We're very proud of our track record in this regard for trying to obtain equality for women in all sorts of spheres, but certainly in politics. The kind of political system we have in New Zealand at the moment is a proportional representation system known as MMP, which stands for Mixed Member Proportional Representation. It has allowed for greater diversity of representation in our Parliament, and for me personally, I believe that that has been a very positive thing for our country. Currently, we have a Labour-led minority government, of which I am a member, as a member of the New Zealand Labour Party. Our Prime Minister and my party leader is the Right Honourable Helen Clark, and we have now been on the Treasury benches in our Parliament since 1999, when we were elected. It is a crucial part of our democracy that New Zealanders, the public, are able to cooperate and or be part of the democratic process. So it's not like we just sit here and make up our minds. We are accountable always to the people who elect us, and very public. Our lives and our conduct and everything we do is up for public scrutiny. We welcome demonstration to our parliament, and often we do, peaceful protests, and we have had some most awesome protests. We have what I consider to be a very fortunate and perhaps unique situation for Indigenous peoples in our country. As I have mentioned before, Māori are the First Nations people of New Zealand, and in 1840 the Treaty of Waitangi was signed, and that was a treaty between Māori in New Zealand and the Crown, namely Queen Victoria at the time. The treaty has been the basis of establishing greater race relations in this country. And although there has been much struggle since 1840, in more recent times there has been an acknowledgement of some of the wrongs done to Māori during colonisation, etc., and they are being addressed, and the Treaty of Waitangi has been a major mechanism for this to be able to work. Now, I'm not saying that it is not without its faults, that it doesn't have its tensions and problems, but what I am proud of is that in New Zealand we have been able to establish very good race relations and debate the issues, deal with grievances such as land claims and things like that without bloodshed.
Contrairement aux États-Unis et à l'Australie, il n'y a pas eu de massacre de la population indigène. En vérité, les premiers habitants de ces terres étaient des oiseaux. C'est seulement entre 500 et 1300 après Jésus-Christ que les Maoris quittèrent l'est de la Polynésie à bord de waka, leur canoë, pour s'installer en Nouvelle-Zélande. Ils nommèrent ces terres Aotearoa, la terre du long nuage blanc. En 1662, un navigateur hollandais, Abel Johnson Tasman, fut le premier Européen à atteindre ces îles, qu'il renomma Nouvelle-Zélande.
Ahoy, land is here.
Mais c'est véritablement à partir de 1769, grâce au voyage du Britannique James Cook, que ce pays a suscité l'intérêt des Européens.
Lads, you're going to get fresh fruit, fresh provisions and clean water.
Un explorateur français, Jean de Surville, est arrivé seulement 2 mois après James Cook. Les Européens sont venus coloniser ces terres au début du XIXe siècle. Parmi eux, des baleiniers, des marchands et des missionnaires. La rencontre entre les Maoris et les Européens, nommée aussi Pakea, est à la base de la société néo-zélandaise. Les Néo-Zélandais préservent leurs deux cultures et ils sont fiers de les partager.
In former days was used by our men who actually, it was an implement that would help them with weaponry such as taiaha, which is the long stick, patu or mere, they were the shorter clubs made out of wood or greenstone. It would strengthen their wrists, add dexterity so you could move as such. It would strengthen the forearm and the long arm here. Also to strengthen this part of the body for coordination, rhythm, for striking such as this. And if you can see my wrists moving, that's what it did. And they do such actions as this. And back then the poi wasn't made out of plastic as you see, it was sponge, but it was made out of flax or bulrushes, you would know. And there was such a long process to make our pois. It was actually quite hard, if you can hear it. It was hard and heavy, the poi back then. But today, us women have taken the poi, we've progressed from there. We don't use it as such to prepare ourselves for war, but we do use it during our performances. talking to our generation now, especially our younger generation, it actually it helps them hold on to those things because music is a part of us. We love our music, and we have taken modern tunes. And we've just added our words of the past, our words of the present and future. Yes, it's not only the past that we talk about, it's our aspirations and dreams for us as a people and for our children for the next generation.
The focal point of any Māori village is the tipuna whare, tipuna ancestor, whare house, ancestral meeting house. This one was carved in the name of Wahiao, and as you already know, he was the warrior chief that ruled over this valley, this village, all those years ago. Now, he had quite an influence on this village. The tipuna whare is carved in his name, in his being as opposed to his likeness. The village itself is named after him, Te Whakarewarewatanga o Te Ope Taua, a Wahiao. And of course the people are named after him as well. Ngāti, the people of, Wahiao, Ngāti, Wahiao. So you can see that his mana, his prestige, stands tall in this village, even to this day. The area immediately in front of the ancestral meeting house that we walked across to come into the maho, or the veranda of the marae, of the meeting house, is tapu. It's sacred, very special to the people. It belongs to the god of war, Tumatoinga. So whenever we argue, that's where we argue. Whenever we fight, that's where we fight. Whenever we fought to the death, past tense, that's where we spilled our blood. And it was only once we got rid of all that anger and hatred out of our system that we could actually set foot inside the meeting house. Because that domain, once you are inside, belongs to Rongo Tāne, the god of peace. And the two gods must be kept apart. They mustn't come together. Now, to most people, this is a house, a building. To myself, the people that live in the village, it's Wahiao, the warrior chief, the man himself. And we believe that when we do go inside, we're entering his body, his bosom. So again, we take off our shoes as a mark of respect. All of these carvings that you see outside and in, each one of those carvings tells a story about a person or an event that may have happened here in the village or in the valley as a whole. Before the coming of the European people, we never had a written language. It was the missionary that put pen to paper and gave us one. Before that, our history was kept in our carvings. Well, at least our tangible history. Most of our history was passed down by word of mouth, chant, and incantation. Now, we use the tipuna whare for tangihana or funeral, hui or meeting, wānanga or seminar, weddings, birthdays, family reunion, so it's like a little town hall. It's not a church. It's not a church. The reason we can feel the heat so easily on the surface, and I can stamp the ground and make it shake, I'm sure you heard the echo, is because the crust that we're standing on is less than 30 metres. So this is one of the thinnest tracts of land you'll find anywhere in the world, but you'll find that in most geothermal areas. It's particularly thin, but the mud pools, the geysers, the hot springs, the ngāwha, the tomo, which is a bigger version of the ngāwha, what they're all doing is releasing the pressure down below so that it doesn't build up underneath the crust and erupt. So those are our safety valves. They're the reason that we've been able to live here for as long as we have. This area through here we call rahui. It's our kitchen, bathroom and laundry, all under the open skies, even in the dead of winter. Sweet corn. This is the urupa, the graveyard, the cemetery. And as you can see, we bury above the ground. And the reasons for that are very simple. The earth beneath the surface is just too volatile. We like to keep the body whole so that the spirit can lift from the body, travel to the top of the North Island, to Cape Reinga. And if you peek over the edge, you can see a little ledge just beneath the top of the North Island. the spirit jumps from that ledge and travels to Hawaii Nui, Hawaii Roa, Hawaii Pāmamau, our traditional homeland.
Empty spaces are so threatening. They are appalling. See yourself when you're with me, smiling at your own perfection, self-adoration.
Hey, bonjour. Yeah, I'm Roger Redden. I've been living on Waiheke Island here for about 20 years. Been fishing out of here, rowing out here for, probably over 20 years actually. In the middle of Only-Tangi Bay, Waiheke Island. I'm just going to go out in my boat over here and catch some fish. Come and have a look at the boat anyway, she's not big. Here's my motor. Yeah, go. Oh yeah, here we go. Gotta be fast. Start the engines. Yeah, we're out here fishing here now. Money doesn't come into it. And this is the beauty about rowing out here again, is that I've proved many a time that you don't need a big flash launch and a big motor to catch fish. I've had people out here with big, huge flash launches. Gin palaces come up to me and their boat because they've seen me catching fish. And they've been sitting there and they're looking at each other thinking, how's he catching fish? We've got the rods, we've got all the sophisticated technology, and we get nothing. And here I am with a hand line with knots in it and a rowboat. And hopefully catch a few fish. Well, I usually do. But you don't know. There's one right here. So we got to go. Oh, bastard. See, just as we said it, eh? Look. Freaky. There's a little fish. That's probably legal size to keep. But I'm going to throw it back. Give it a chance. Look at that, it's beautiful. Do you want it? It's probably just legal size to keep that. But no, we throw it back. Oh, fishing's part of being a New Zealander really, because yeah, I mean the water's right on our back doorstep, you know what I mean? I suppose New Zealand's quite a pure little place compared to some countries over there in the world, you know? And with a small population, you know, like I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I know probably at least 3,000 people now. If they know 1,000 people each, doesn't take much to get 1 million, does it? You know, and New Zealand's only 4 million people, but a lot of people get on together and they're tight-knit families and what have you. And the pollution level down here is not too bad and stuff, so people naturally turn to the water and the you know, the nature side of life. But no, I'm pretty close to. I think the only way to really explain it to anybody is you got to understand Mother Nature. Too many people don't even think about that. I mean, you look at the little birds out here, the penguin we've seen before, everything, even that little fish, it's got a heartbeat. Anything with a heartbeat's connecting into a connection somewhere in it. You know, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. There's something there, eh? There's got to be. But what I'm saying is that I row out here, and by the time I get out to the grounds, you know, I've done a good workout, and I feel that you know, like if Mother Nature's watching me, it says, look, okay, you put the effort in, now here's a reward. Some people have just got the natural urge to get out there and do it, and this is the main thing, is having a go. And you've got to put the emphasis on that. As long as you're out there having a go, things will either come naturally to you or they won't, you know what I mean?
In New Zealand, 2 explosions have destroyed the Greenpeace protest vessel Rainbow Warrior. The crew says the first blast was through the boat onto its side.
And his body was found
2
by
minutes later, virtually sank.
Police believe the bombs were sophisticated devices and say international terrorists may have been involved.
The crew was killed.
His body was later found in the hull of the boat.
My name is Bunny McDiarmid. I'm a New Zealander. Currently, I'm the Executive Director of Greenpeace New Zealand, and in 1985 I worked on board the Rainbow Warrior as crew. Rainbow Warrior was a sailing boat, a very big sailing boat that belonged to the Greenpeace organisation, environmental organisation, and in 1985 it was travelling in the Pacific visiting a number of different countries talking about nuclear issues. We came to New Zealand, and from New Zealand we were heading with a number of boats, what we called a peace flotilla, to Mororoa, which was where the French government was conducting its nuclear testing program and had been doing it there since the 60s. So while we were in New Zealand, we arrived on July 7th, which was the middle of winter in New Zealand. And 3 days later, the boat was blown up. There were 2 bombs that were put on the outside of the boat underwater. And the boat, at 10 to midnight, the bombs went off while many people were still on board. The Rainbow Warrior was home to, I think there were 13 of us who were crew at the time, and we had a few people staying on board. So a number of people were sleeping. And the boat sank very quickly, within 4 minutes. It was on the bottom of the harbour. And when the second bomb went off at the stern of the boat, it knocked our photographer, Fernando Pereira, unconscious, and he drowned as a result. I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams would have thought that France would go to that extent and blow a boat up. I mean, it was actually extraordinary how quickly the New Zealand police put things together. And it was, it's quite a fascinating detective story in some ways, in terms of how the DGSE, the French agents, they were incredibly incompetent and left clues all over the place and were noticed by a lot of people and made a lot of mistakes. And unfortunately, we only caught 2 people when there was, probably up to 10 people involved at the time. But we had no help. I mean, as soon as it was established that the French were involved in some way, the French government first of all made statements like justice at the highest level and grandiose statements about ensuring that justice was done. But really all the time they were trying to cover their own backs and protect themselves and make sure the damage was very minimal. France's attitude was arrogant, violent, aggressive. This is their government's attitude. It was very difficult for the New Zealand police to get any assistance. I remember the US ambassador to the United Nations, Jean Kirkpatrick, at the time, she said it wasn't terrorism because they didn't mean to kill anyone. It's a really interesting statement given what the United States is currently involved in. There was New Zealand police that went to France, and you almost feel embarrassed for them, how difficult it was to actually get any assistance to help unravel a horrible, tragic murder story. The United Nations actually negotiated a settlement because of the 2 French spies that were caught and that were tried in New Zealand and were convicted of manslaughter and were sentenced to 10 years. But what happened was that the United Nations were mediated an arrangement whereby the two French spies didn't have to serve their time in New Zealand jail, but were able to go to Hao Atoll, which is in French Polynesia, which is one of the places where the French testing was conducted. But they only went there for 1 or 2 years, and then they broke the agreement. Both of them went home, and they were treated like heroes when they went home, which was extraordinarily difficult for all of us that were actually part of the crew. And I think it was a real slap in the face to New Zealanders. I think a lot of New Zealanders considered France as an ally, as a friendly nation. I mean, many New Zealanders had gone over to fight in France to protect their freedom in the Second World War, First World War as well. So there was people felt a strong connection with France. So that was very shocking, that a country that you considered friendly would come into your country and do something like that. And so it wasn't only a piece of Greenpeace's history, it's a piece of New Zealand's history too, because it happened to New Zealand as well as happening to Greenpeace. It was a very big thing that happened. I mean, it was state terrorism for New Zealand. And if you say to a lot of New Zealanders today, almost French and Rainbow Warrior are always in the same sentence. People think of them. It used to be probably 50 years ago, it was French and Champagne. Today it's French and the Rainbow Warrior. With a bit of distance, I think most New Zealanders see it as a French government, French Secret Service crime. They don't hold the French public responsible for it. I think that's the difference between then and now.
Je suis originaire de l'île de la Réunion et ma famille et moi-même avons décidé de venir nous établir en Nouvelle-Zélande il y a maintenant 7 ans et nous avons mis en place un vignoble dans la région du Marlborough, dans le nord de l'île du Sud, et nous produisons des vins de cépage, du Sauvignon blanc, du Chardonnay et du Pinot noir principalement.
En ce qui me concerne, je produis simplement de la méthode champenoise. Ce que vous avez ici, c'est un blanc de blanc, c'est-à-dire un vin produit à partir de Chardonnay. Il y a 30 ans, j'ai décidé de m'expatrier, de venir m'établir dans ce pays. Depuis tout ce temps-là, jamais une seule fois j'ai regretté d'avoir fait ce que j'ai fait. La vie est bien meilleure ici, je pense.
On connaissait déjà bien le pays, on était venu plusieurs fois et on avait bien sûr beaucoup apprécié non seulement le lifestyle, comme ils disent ici, la gentillesse des Néo-Zélandais, leur accueil, le fait que ce soit un pays très peu peuplé. Donc, comme disait Daniel, avec des choses qu'on ne retrouve pas comme en Europe, comme la criminalité ou les problèmes de circulation, etc., de surpopulation. Ayant choisi de venir nous établir ici, nous avons pensé avec l'aide de Daniel, qu'établir un vignoble ici serait une bonne chose. Donc nous avons choisi la région du Marlborough parce que c'est effectivement une région qui paraît idéale. Il y a des développements notamment sur les sauvignons blancs dans des arômes qui sont un peu uniques au monde. C'est pour ça que les sauvignons blancs de Nouvelle-Zélande aujourd'hui remportent beaucoup de médailles dans les concours internationaux. Il n'y a pas ici de système d'appellation contrôlée comme on le retrouve en Europe, et notamment en France, qui vient un peu comme une épée de Damoclès en disant non, là, ici, on ne peut pas planter de pinot noir, ou là, ici, vous ne pouvez planter que du chardonnay. C'est vous qui prenez le risque, c'est vous qui choisissez en fonction des marchés que vous voulez atteindre, des vins que vous voulez produire, des styles de vins que vous voulez produire. Donc, grande liberté au niveau des choix, au niveau de la viticulture et des choix au niveau de l'œnologie, de la façon dont vous voulez faire vos vins.
Il n'y a pratiquement que des cépages français qui sont cultivés dans le pays. Tous ces cépages donc, ont pu être importés en ce qui concerne la viticulture. Et on a pratiquement maintenant le choix que n'importe quel viticulteur français pourrait avoir pour la sélection de ses vignobles.
Je crois qu'on en fait 0,3% de la production mondiale, ce qui est minuscule. La totalité du vignoble néo-zélandais aujourd'hui, c'est 20 000 hectares. 20 000 hectares, pour vous donner une échelle, c'est le vignoble du Beaujolais, à lui tout seul. Donc c'est gros pour le pays, mais c'est petit à l'échelle mondiale et à l'échelle européenne. Au niveau du goût, je crois qu'il y a aussi une chose qui est qui est remarquable ici, c'est que les gens ne sont pas... En France, les connaisseurs de vin vont aller souvent vers des vins âgés, parce que ça correspond à leur goût. Ici, d'abord, compte tenu du fait que la production de Nouvelle-Zélande est quand même jeune, production de qualité est jeune, parce que ça remonte à 15 ou 20 ans, les consommateurs sont plutôt orientés vers des vins jeunes. Il n'y a pas de vieux vins, entre guillemets, néo-zélandais. C'est des vins qui ont 30 ou 40 ans, comme on va en trouver peut-être dans le Bordelais ou en Bourgogne.
En France, simplement on boit du vin parce que c'est une bonne bouteille et puis qu'on l'apprécie, qu'on l'aime. Pour la plupart du temps avec un repas, bien sûr. Ici, il y a encore 20 ans, il y avait très peu de gens qui connaissaient le vin et qui savaient apprécier le vin. Ils sont passés, si vous voulez, d'un extrême à l'autre. Maintenant, c'est tous un peu des experts.
Vous allez dans une soirée, il n'était pas rare il y a 10 ans de voir la moitié des gens boire de la bière et la moitié des gens boire du vin. Aujourd'hui, ça va être plutôt 90% qui vont boire du vin, avec un verre de vin à la main et 10% seulement à la bière. Donc là, il y a une habitude de consommation qui est en train de basculer complètement vers le vin. Bon, la consommation de bière est bien sûr encore très, très importante ici, mais le vin devient un peu la boisson un peu obligée, quoi.
Savez-vous combien il y a de moutons en Nouvelle-Zélande ? 53 millions, soit 13 fois plus de moutons que d'hommes. L'activité principale de la Nouvelle-Zélande, c'est incontestablement l'agriculture.
Traditionally, I guess, when New Zealand was settled, we were the breadbasket of England, basically. And what happened was we were encouraged to export meat and wool and our agricultural products to Europe, basically. And we could do that very cheaply in New Zealand because our land was quite cheap, and we did it with grass. Like, our animals only eat grass and they don't need housed or anything at night in the winter time. So it's quite a low-cost agricultural system. Traditionally it's been a high country farm, but our type of wool is not, we're not getting the returns that we used to get for it. Because we're so far away from our markets, it's getting quite expensive to export our produce overseas. People like us are looking at doing different things like ecotourism and opening up our properties for people to come and enjoy, basically. And people love nature, come and see nature, so we're just letting it do its thing and bring people to come and watch it, you know. So long term, that's a lot more sustainable. It is real clean green New Zealand. It's right out walking amongst the bush and seeing the birds and seeing the animals, and you're just walking, you know. It's very low impact type tourism, which is great for us, you know. It's great for our country, and I think it's what a lot of people want to do now, you know. Walking's a real growth industry around the world.
Predominantly, most people are from the UK as a percentage, and then we've got a lot of Europeans, and even now we're finding we're getting a lot of North Americans, Canadians, and people from the US. I've noticed a real trend in the last couple of years of Australians coming over. I think the culmination of terrorism in Indonesia and Bali and cheap airfares over here, Australians are looking for a fairly safe place to go, but I think they're realising now, with a lot of the marketing campaigns taken on by the Tourism Board and private companies in Australia, that it's seen as hey, why not go see New Zealand, you know, it's just across the ditch. And most people are saying, wow, the first time I've been here and I'll definitely come again. They're quite surprised by what New Zealand has to offer. I really think New Zealand should be promoted as a quality destination, not a cheap place to come. And we have so much to offer, and we don't want to just open the floodgates, so to speak, and encourage too much investment if we can, because New Zealand is the way it is, with a smaller population. Once you get overcrowding, and that's suddenly, if the word gets out, I suppose, you're going to get so many people coming here, we won't know what to do with them. And of course, a lot of the places people come to see now, some of the walks and the treks, it's going to end up having to book years in advance to even get on them. So we do have to be a little bit careful how we open up this country.
There's some real big challenges out there with probably Tourism New Zealand and DOC. I think that it's really important they don't overexpose these areas, and that's, I think, the road that the Tourism New Zealand and that are going down, that we must go down really, to really preserve the pristine and the quality experience that we have here. We need to manage it.
I'd hate it to get to the stage where you've got beaches with deck chairs and umbrellas like I saw in Italy last year, where you pay your €7, €8 to get your spot for the day. And I can't ever imagine it happening in New Zealand, but it'd be a sad day if that had ever happened. It would just be really quite bizarre and unnatural for a lot of Kiwis to see that. Walk down the beach you once knew as a child, and all of a sudden there's people sunbathing on deck chairs and having to pay to do that for the privilege of doing it.
It all comes back to management on numbers. It's on the minds of a lot of New Zealanders that we do have a lot of people now in some areas, and I think that we're aware of it, and I think that we're onto it. We're going to do something about it. I think generally that we can see that there's a problem, or could be a problem, and that I think that they'll take steps to avoid any long-term problems there.
Quite nice to be a New Zealander.
It's part of my identity.
It's just a very unique place to be.
I'm extraordinarily proud of my country.
I feel very proud of what a small country can do and accomplish.
In the sporting arena, in the political arena, in the humanitarian arena.
We have the possibility to do things differently.
That's a pretty good effort for a bunch of Kiwis, I guess.
New Zealand's actually reasonably lucky, I think.
Extraordinarily lucky to be living in a pretty pristine country.
Yeah, you know, our environment's probably our biggest asset.
The smell of the bush, the colour of the rivers. It's wide open beaches with no hamburger bars on them.